The relationship is the most valuable thing you have as a
Yeah.
business. Not
Wow.
just for monetizing, but also for legal protection. And
Wow.
and you should take joy in the relationships because
Yeah.
I believe like at the end of the day, we're told to store up treasures in heaven.
Mm,
Like what are those treasures in heaven? Like I
mm,
think it's only one thing, and that is the relationships and the people that we bring with us to eternity. Like that's the only thing that
mm.
matters.
Hey, everybody, you're now in again with Lionel Mosby Jr., the Lion and the Lambo podcast. Of course, we're streaming on all streaming platforms. And of course, you want the visual experience. You can catch us over on YouTube. And I'm in today with a good brother. I actually been waiting to talk to somebody in this field. So I'm so happy to have my friend on, Jay Razzouk. How you doing today, sir?
I am thrilled to be here with you, Lionel.
That's awesome, man.
I'm excited to talk about the law, which probably most people usually don't want to talk about, but I hope after this they'll be excited about it.
Hey, it's so exciting, right? You want to talk about the law, and I love that we can talk about the law and understand that. Guess what? There's a combination between the law and mercy. There's a combination between these two, so we can talk about the law with an even better understanding, right? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
Amen.
people are scared of the law, right? You know what I'm saying? From a scriptural standpoint, from a legal standpoint. But today we're coming to help you understand that you shouldn't fear the law. You shouldn't fear it. You shouldn't fear it at all. All right.
I'll show you how the law actually can help set you free.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited. Look at it. We dropping bombs already, man. I'm so excited to have you on. Like you say, right? The law can set you free, right? It's important, right? To understand it so that we can make sure that we're in the right position and everything when we're moving about on our entrepreneurial journeys. But before we get started, man, I always like to ask my guests when we come on this question at the beginning. What would you say for you yourself has been your greatest win so far as an entrepreneur? What is your greatest win so far?
I think it's just getting really into that entrepreneur mindset where I understand my value, better understand other people's value, and how to just better engage with them, where we can both be in positions of strength. We don't have to compete with one another, but just better create relationships that are mutually beneficial. And that's been a real journey. And just the better I understand it, the better business is, better relationships are, better life is. And I think you probably might be able to relate to that too.
Wow, that's a very powerful point. I think that makes a lot of sense, right? We talk about that mindset, right, of really recognizing not only your value but also other people's value. In real estate, right, I like to call it win-win situations, and I always say, look, there's a place where everybody wins. We're not trying to crush somebody else, right? We're trying to create win-win situations to where, guess what? The seller's happy, the buyer's happy, everybody's happy, right? But you're right. There's a lot of people who have not yet come to that mindset and that understanding. And because of that, right, it is a competition. You know what I mean? And so I think it's very important to understand. That's such a big thing, such a huge thing. And what I love in the first place is that a lot of people, when we talk about wins, people only think about monetary value, for example, right? And I'm so excited to hear, guests in and out, right, share wins that aren't attached to just simply money, because guess what? Even the thing about being an entrepreneur, the one of the most important things, right, is the lessons you learn, right? These things that you gather along your journey, right? The freedom that you can gather for you and your family, right? There's so many other things outside of that, right? And most importantly is the impact that you can have on the community around you. And that's what we're all about here at the Lion and Lambo podcast. Yeah, that's the big one, man. And so, Jay, I want to really just get into your story, man. I know that you're in the legal field, right? How do you introduce yourself? When somebody asks you, say, Jay, what do you do, right? How do you define yourself and what you do right now?
I find the easiest thing for people to understand is when I say I'm a fractional general counsel. And
Hmm.
and so, like the big corporations, they have a general counsel that's their main attorney who runs everything for them. So I like being that for not quite the giant businesses, but those businesses that are scaling to like 7, 8
Mm.
figures and help them get all their legal ducks in a row. And for me, I'm all about prevention. And I really like, for example, working with like health coaches, doctors, people in the health space. And just like I like working with ones that are preventative, like they want to, rather than cure people of the problems, they want to, prevent them in the first place. That's my
Mm.
approach for legal too.
Wow.
And my goal is to make sure hopefully you never have a lawsuit. If you have conflicts, they're resolved well and lead to better relationships. Like that's
Mm.
how I want to approach legal.
That's so dope, right? That is so cool. Do you find that you're kind of unique when it comes to from an individual that is working right in that field, that you kind of have a unique brand in that sense, right? Of trying to not just simply solve legal problems, right? But you're also trying to position the businesses that you work with to actually build better relationships out of the situations that they're in.
Yeah, I think the downside of our legal system is, we go to law school and we're told we have an adversarial legal system. And
Mm.
so I think attorneys naturally approach it that, I got to be this rigorous, zealous advocate for my client. And that means I got to be as much of a jerk as possible to the other people. And
Mm.
unfortunately, that just causes polarity,
Wow.
which just destroys the relationships. And at the end of the day, makes nobody happy other than the attorney who gets paid a lot of money.
Wow.
So I don't want to be that type of lawyer. I want to see the relationships being restored, coming back together.
Yes.
Everybody having that peace and making as little money for lawyers who go to court as possible. I don't have anything
Right.
necessarily against them, but I'll be happy to put them all out of business.
Right, right, and so that's almost like sounds counterintuitive to some people, right? Because you're a lawyer that's seeking to help people to mitigate lawsuits, right? And having
Exactly.
to go to court, that almost seems backwards, right? But it's so awesome because I mean, even when you're saying that, right? It's like, man, you're thinking about, because I always just see good business principles are gospel principles to me, right? Every time I hear
Exactly.
good business principles, I hear like gospel principles jumping out the page. And we're just saying, and I'm thinking like, man, God has given all of us a ministry of reconciliation. We're supposed to be bringing people
Mhm.
together, not
Exactly.
separating them. And even in how you go about, right, working with your clients, is still for the purpose of, at the end of the day, we're trying to solve a problem that still brings you two together, that you're not seeing from an adversarial standpoint, right? But you guys can be reconciled. And after we're done with what we do here, you guys can go on and still grow that relationship more and more. Has that been something you've seen? Have you have any experience, a story of individual that you've helped, a business that you've worked with, and you've seen that relationship after you've dealt with it really be able to mend and grow from there?
Um, Probably the most influential case I ever had was representing a client where the client's partners basically double cross them and try to steal the whole company out from under him. And I,
Wow.
of course, I'm like, litigation is a mess. You want to avoid as much as possible, but then it reaches a point where like
Right.
they left no other option.
Hmm.
So do do the suing, going to trial, doing great. Well, not really trial, but we're having hearings. We're getting there. We seem to be having success, and let's settle. Then all of a sudden, the client says, "You know what? I just want to give them everything. Like,
Mm.
I want to have peace. Let's just, the relationships are more important." And then I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Never thought I would have a client do this. Where is this
Wow.
coming from? But it was interesting to see the results. And this person was struggling at first, but after doing these steps, has
Mm.
become extremely successful. And now, and I think you see relationships where that the conflict with the partners was leading into conflicts and issues with others. And the world is a small
Mm.
space, and it starts having these huge ramifications. But by willing to sacrifice. right?
Mm.
We're willing to, give up even when it hurts to restore the relationship,
Wow.
bore wonderful fruits for this person. And to
Mm.
me, it was great confirmation to see that it is okay to do what most lawyers will think is absolutely crazy and never
Wow.
let their clients do. But I was just so inspired by this client, their story, and that really has put me on the path to, yes, litigation is almost never the right path. There's got to be usually a better way that will heal the relationships, because at the end of the day, what really matters? If you were
Right.
the richest person on the planet, you had everything, but you were alone, would any of that stuff really matter?
Mm. Wow. Wow.
So it, I
Yeah.
mean, and just look at the way the universe is created. We have an atom, and or the atoms make all the matter around us. So
Mm-hmm.
that microphone in front of you, your shirt, it is atoms that are held together in relationships. There's bonds.
Mm.
And what happens? We cut the atom and we find there's other particles that are held together in relationships. We cut those
Wow.
and there's smaller particles that are held together. I mean, it seems like the universe is actually created of relationships, I would say. It's not necessarily matter. It's it's a, so we talk about like what's the meaning of life? We always joke
Yeah.
about nobody knows the meaning of life, but I think it's really simple, right? It's
Mm.
to love and to be loved.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. First of all, like I always say, like I need to get a machine so I can drop bombs when I hear points like that. Okay, because man, that is so powerful. The universe is made up of bonds of relationships, right?
Mhm.
That's what it's all about. And I'm so happy to hear, right, and see that we can live out our Christianity, right, in our businesses. That's the main thing, right? I hope that whoever's listening to this story, right, that inspired Jay, right, in the midst of this moment to even show you, right, that you know what, you're on the right path in the way you're going about conducting your business. But guess
Mhm.
what? That's for every single one of us and every single thing that we do. We can live our Christianity in our businesses. God will take care of all of the rest, right?
Exactly.
He will make sure that we're good. But the purpose for us being there is not just the job, it's the relationships, it's the bonds that we're building with our clients, with their families, with the individual, even with the people across the table, for example, in this scenario, right? Like, this is why we're there, right? And so, man, I'm so happy to hear that. Like, I kind of want to rewind though, right? I want to know, right? How did you get to the point to where you decided, you know what, I want to go into law and do it differently, right? Did you always want to be a lawyer? Was that something that was on the docket from when you were born? Kind of, flesh that out for us. Of what was the process when you were a teenager growing up, until you walking into going into law?
Uh, it definitely was a process. As you know, I grew up in a community where everybody around me is a doctor, a nurse, or some sort of health professional. Like the hospital is the tallest, biggest building in my community, and everybody is expected to be a doctor, nurse, or something like that. And
I
unfortunately,
can
I
get
came
that.
from grandparents who are doctors, uncles
Mm,
doctors, mom dietitian. So there's like all this pressure of, okay, well, when you graduate, you will go to medical school and be a doctor. And I just deep down didn't feel like that was me. I wanted something
mm,
to have a certain level of creativity. I like advocacy,
mm,
argumentation, not being argumentative, but
mm.
analyzing things and being persuasive and uh, being influential in a sense. So I like that about the law. Went to law school in at Pepperdine in
Okay.
Malibu, which is a Christian law school. And when I was there, Ken Starr, the
Okay.
guy of the Starr Report who investigated Bill Clinton, he was the dean of the school at the time,
Okay.
and he is definitely a Christian and was so not persuasive, influential, I think, in helping me understand that it's okay to be a Christian and a lawyer, and not let your Christianity suffer. He at the time, for example, was representing someone who was on death row. And people are like, how can you do this? Ken, we thought you were conservative, and how are you representing someone who's supposed to, be put to the death? And he did a presentation for us students, talking about how, he feels called as from the Bible to take care of the least of these and to ensure
Wow.
justice. And just the way he was so heartfelt, like, I am fulfilling my calling here, really inspired
Wow.
me. And so I go on to represent shareholders of public companies, holding like CEOs, directors accountable for like fraud, major scandals, like things you would see in the Wall Street Journal, and try to fix the company and make that not happen again. But it's really hard when you're an outsider trying to bring these changes. So I'm like, I want to work with the people on the inside. I want to work with the business people as they're growing their businesses. And then, so when I transitioned from that law firm where I was doing that work to being on my own, my wife and I started filming a documentary actually on mental health. And why that happened, I mean, God says do mental health. It seems so random, but that was one of the best things that ever happened. Because then I began to really understand how blessed I was growing up in a church community. I mean, almost all my friends, their parents were married. Divorce was a very rare thing. Everybody was so loving. My parents are loving. My friends' parents are loving. Church members are loving. There's just love all around. And working on this documentary, I come to realize there's this whole other world where people are born with parents with major problems. And not saying that the parents necessarily have fault, but maybe the parents' parents had issues, so they were neglected. They didn't have their emotional needs met. They don't know how to be good parents. And this just leads to generation after generation of mental health issues. And just learning how people can be so fragile and broken in so many ways really made me rethink again, like, we really need to be more caring, more kind, more understanding. And on top of that, learning what seems to be usually the number one solution, one of the best things in helping people get healed. It's not like necessarily one therapy is better than another. It was the quality of the relationship between therapists that had the most correlation to people getting healing.
Wow.
And so I realized it all comes back to relationships.
Wow.
So relationships really are everything. And when relationships are damaged, relationships are broken, that's when a lot of us see our mental health issues.
Wow. That's so powerful. That's so true. When you did this documentary, this is when you were still working for the law firm that you was working at the time, working with
just after I left it.
Okay, it was just after you left that law firm at that time, right? Did you have any previous experience kind of like with media too as well?
I've always been doing media at my church, where I'm like one of the directors that calls the shots. I was making videos in college, made a documentary there. So not formal training, but definitely it's always been in my blood.
Right. Okay. So it's something that you were dabbling with, that you did here and there for the church as well as yourself. So when God called you to do that, because I heard you, kind of mention, you say it was kind of like, why mental health? What was that conversation like, right? When you were hearing God leading you to say, hey, go put time and effort into doing this documentary. And is that the Unbroken Minds? That's
Unbroken Minds.
Gotcha. And is that still available for anyone if they wanted to check it out?
So we're actually still in the process of producing it.
Okay.
It's definitely been a challenge. Like when COVID hit and we're talking about having relationships and community being in person, like, oh, now's probably not the right time to put it out. But it's
okay.
It's going to be a work in progress, but even still, like the full impact, well, not full impact, but it's already had a major impact. It's changed me, and I can't wait to get it out for others.
Right, right. So I mean, I guess the question was, right, when you were what was that conversation like at that time with God, right? When you were hearing him say, okay, go do this documentary on mental health, because it's not like it was something that you were saying, hey, I have this desire in the back of my head, like I want to do something on mental health at some point in time, and I have a little time, right? It was like this is like something that's coming out the blue, right?
Yeah,
So
I have to give my wife the credit. She was the one that heard the voice and to do it. So she's like,
So so
"Hey, we
so
should go
it
do
was
it."
the partnership. It was the partnership.
Yeah, I was like, "It sounds crazy," but I've learned not to question my wife when she says she's heard God speak.
And that has been a process over time as well, I'm sure as well.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And how long have you been married now?
I think we're in our 7th year,
Awesome.
but yeah, it
Okay.
would be 8 years in November.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. So you've gone through this process. You worked with businesses, but you're working for, like you said, from the outside in, right? Working to change some of these issues that you saw with these larger businesses, and it kind of led you to the thought process. So, you know what? If I can deal with preventing the problem before it starts, right? Before it gets there, then I feel like we can have better success at kind of mitigating some of these issues that come up and that arise. And so that's what
Exactly.
led you to start to look to say, okay, let me kind of turn and start focusing on individuals from the beginning. What was it like going through that experience of kind of moving from this law firm that you're working with there to then starting to reach out and work with really business owners and entrepreneurs that's just starting, right?
I It was like a real breath of fresh air. I mean, because
Mhm.
I was doing litigation before that, and I just
Mm,
feel like litigation is like this black hole where money gets destroyed for people, and then the lawyers somehow walk away with a lot of it. And it's,
mm.
not that I was making a ton of money from it, but the other attorneys definitely were. So it's, it's just one of those things where, okay, we're spending tons of money to try to bring about these changes after the fact. It just goes back to that saying, like, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound
Mm,
of cure. So it's like
mm.
cancer. When's the cheapest, best time to prevent cancer? When it's like full blown stage 4, and you're going to need, surgery and radiation and chemo and, all these
Definitely
other,
not.
or is it
Mm,
in the beginning when you're exposing yourself to poisons and cancers and, or sorry, radiation and
right.
bad foods and things like that. So take care of
Mm,
it early. So that's the approach I go with now for law and working with individuals. I have to say though, unfortunately, here's the downside, and here's the thing for all your listeners.
okay.
Still, most of the people I work with come to me when they have a problem. Like, I mean,
Mm,
it's just like most people probably don't see the dentist until they have a cavity. Like, no, most people still can't bring themselves to the prevention, and I get it. Nobody wants it.
true.
You don't know a lawyer. Probably it takes a lot to go and make that connection, but
Mm,
still, if you, I wish people come to me sooner when I can
mm,
help them identify what will become an issue and fix
mm.
that early on. Or if it's a dispute, like come early on when the dispute just started, and then let's, don't send a few angry letters in the heat of the moment that then, really destroy the relationship. Work with that lawyer. Let's send a very carefully written friendly letter that will hopefully bring things back. So there's that. That's still a frustration I've had, but working with
Right.
entrepreneurs still has been a breath of fresh air. I love the energy, the passion,
Mm,
the creativity that
right.
entrepreneurs have. It's
Yeah.
just so inspiring seeing the products that they are taking from idea to fruition.
Mm.
Working with, the coaches. I love working with the coaches because it says lots of coaching back when you are, uh, learning about their products, what they do, and
Right, right,
the good
right.
tips.
That's awesome, man. Like it it kind of makes me think about even myself in my journey and experience, because even when it came to healthcare, right? Like when I was working with Texas Department of Agriculture, of course, I mean they dealt with all my healthcare, everything's taken care of, right? Soon as I jump out and leap out and say, okay, I'm going full time into entrepreneurship, well, I got to cover that, right? And it's
Yep.
like I just be a dead man walking right now, right? You know what I mean? That's just the reality, right? But then when I get to the point where I'm about to get married, it's like I didn't get health insurance, right? You know what I'm saying? Because now it's not just about me, it's about others now. And I'm thinking about people outside of myself. And I guess it makes me think, okay, what is it that would make entrepreneurs connect with this very important thing? Like we need to be on this early on, right? In
Mhm.
our entrepreneurship journey. But like, what is that pain point, I guess, right? That would help us all to realize like, hey, we need to contact Jay at the beginning of our journey instead of waiting until we get into some type of mess, right? Just like it's not
Yes.
the time for me to contact somebody about health insurance after we've gone to the hospital. You're already in trouble at this point, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
what have you found has been something that really helps to help entrepreneurs realize like, hey, you need to get on this like immediately.
So, yeah, I mean, so most of them come to me like after there's been a conflict that
Right.
started, but I want to share a piece of information, maybe put things in perspective of why this is important. So a
Mhm.
few years ago, the Small Business Administration did a survey, and they did a search of like across all federal courts, pulling random cases, trying to figure out which ones involve small businesses.
Mm.
And so then they found a pool of maybe about 2,000 cases that sort of met the criteria, analyzed them. Of those businesses that they looked at, 17% later failed.
Mm.
So cases that are involved, sorry, no, 17% survived. There's a big difference.
83% failed.
83% failed. So
Wow.
these small businesses, if they were sued, had only about a 17, maybe actually it's less than 17, maybe it's, yeah, actually it was like, I think it was 15.6, sorry, percent
Mhm.
survival rate.
Mm.
So you do not want to get sued because the cost of being sued
Mm.
can kill. Let's say it's like 85% fatal if you get it. The
Wow.
average business might, there's different ranges, but maybe, going a few years out, maybe there's a 50% survival chance or something like that. But no, here it's 15.6%.
Mm.
Devastating.
Right. Right. That's that's tough, right? You're already dealing with other factors that you got to deal with in order to keep your business surviving, right? And then you layer on top of the fact that, hey, if you also add a suit on top of that, yeah.
Well, if it's like a house of cards, I mean, you could keep building that house of cards. It could be a great house of cards, but it just takes one little finger to push it and have it
Right.
all come down. And that's what a
Right.
lawsuit does. Legal needs to be a part of your foundation.
Mm.
And
Mm.
just that spending $1,000 to have an attorney help you set up your business can save you $100,000 of expenses and payments down the road.
Mm.
It really
Mm.
can go a long ways.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, okay. So, somebody is looking to start their business now, right? They're saying, all right, I hear you. I'm happy I watched this podcast before I'm just jumped out here, right?
Mhm.
What are the first few steps I need to take care of from a legal standpoint, right? That is important for me and my business. Say it's just a service-based business, say even like a coaching business or something like that, right? You know what I'm saying? So not necessarily a product-based business, right? But just I'm just providing my knowledge base, right,
Mhm.
to other individuals, right? But what are some of the first things I need to do and think about from a legal standpoint to take care of before I start jumping out here and just sharing everything with everybody?
So I have a method I call the secure scale method that sort of is 5 things you need to know that could really help you cover your bases. So it spells the acronym SCALE,
Okay.
SCALE. The first word S stands for structures, and
Hmm.
so you need to consider what are going to be the right structures for you for protection. That includes, let's say, should you have an LLC or corporation? Maybe you don't need it, depending on your circumstances, but that gives you a layer. Next is your contracts. The contracts are also a structure that gives you protection. You ideally should have a good understanding of how they work, have an attorney who has reviewed them, because you never know. Like if you have an independent contractor agreement, that agreement might, if worded wrong, could convert your independent contractor to an employee. And now you have to be subject to all these employment laws. You need to be having workers' comp coverage for them, on and on and on. And you could get in trouble for not having that.
Okay.
Or if they're an independent contractor, they are, you don't have it worded right to handle your intellectual property. Maybe they'll own everything you paid them to make, and you have very limited rights to use it. So there's big consequences if you don't know what you're doing with the contract, and you need a lawyer to help you. Yeah. So those are sort of like structures, and yeah, just all of your intellectual property, like have an understanding of how it works. You know, do you have trademarks? Do you have them registered if you know, or if they're important to you? Do you have anything that's copyrightable? Is that registered if it's really important to your business? Do you have trade secrets? What do you have in place to protect your trade secrets? Like, do you have everybody sign NDAs? And then patents. Do you have something that really should be patented? And, you know, you need to take care of your patent before you go to market with it. So those are all, we're just talking about structures now. So structures is a big category, but it's a very important one. And that's what an attorney can really help you with early on. The next one will be the C, and that's building the right community. C for community. And I explain to people, you could have the best contract in the world, but if you still get into a relationship with the wrong person, things will go wrong. And so you need to really be careful, do your homework, get to know that person. Like if your gut tells you something's off, like listen to your gut. I'm sure everybody's heard stories of so many people say, my gut didn't feel good about it. I mean, that's probably Holy Spirit speaking to you. Listen and don't go for it. Like the pain, the struggle isn't worth it.
Right.
And so this applies to your clients. This applies to your contractors, any workers you hire, your employees. It applies to partners. If you're partnering with someone, that's a very important one to make sure you're really good with that person. And then, I mean, there's some people say basically business relationships might as well be marriage. There's so many parallels with them. And your investments, just basically any sort of relationship you have as a business, do your homework on it. That will save you a lot of headache. The right people will lead to the right outcomes. So SCA, next one is to actions, take the right daily steps. As you grow your business, this becomes more and more important. You need to document procedures and policies so that your employees and other people working for you know what to do when a certain situation applies, and that, you know, legal obligations are being fulfilled. The next one is L, that's loss limiters, fancy word for insurance.
Okay.
And like here in California, it costs $800 a year just to maintain an LLC or corporation, like minimum $800 a year. If you're not big time into business, you're just not making a lot of money, but it's kind of hobby or something like that, take that money and put it into insurance. Even $200 or $300 can go a long ways, depending on what you need. So that's a big one.
Wow, that's a good point.
There's insurance for everything. And again, some insurances are mandatory. Like if you have employees, you might have to have certain types of insurance.
Okay.
And then the last one, and this one we started talking about, and we could probably talk a lot more about, is I call it enlightened mindset. And this is a mindset of where you actually truly love people. And this is where Christians should be better than anybody else, because we should know better than anybody else what true love looks like. Like that agape love that, you know, is patient, is kind, slow to anger, doesn't keep accounts, you know, just go on and on. That's the love that is going to keep you out of trouble. And you could start that today. And I mean, I know people who have no contracts, who've done business for a long period of time without any problem, because they basically follow this.
Right.
They treat people right. And I'll tell you, you look at all of the law of men. Our law is trying to get you to love people. It's trying to, enforce the expectations we have of one another. That you don't steal people's stuff, that you don't lie, you don't cheat, don't kill. Like that's the law is just using millions of words to basically bring those things into effect. If you already have in your mind, I'm just going to focus on loving people and treating them right, you don't have to worry about the millions of laws out there. It becomes so simple. It becomes a joy. That's why I tell you, the law can set you free, because you realize now there's really just one principle to live by. And I do believe deep down, everybody expects to be loved.
Yeah.
I really do. And that's why, even secular laws reflect the love that's spoken about in the Bible. And so when you're loving, we know the verse, like, love, joy, peace, all these things, the fruit of the Spirit. Do you know how that verse ends?
And against the law, there is no such thing.
Or against these things.
Against these things, there is no law. Sorry. Yes,
there is
I definitely bumbled
that. No, but like nobody else has even gone close to that. Most people don't realize, it says against these things, there is no law. Right. So if you are loving, you are going to be doing what the law wants you to be doing. Yeah. That's the best legal advice.
Point, man. That's fire. That is fire. The way you explain that makes so much sense to me now. Like you say, that enlightenment is so, because even while you're saying it, I was thinking, man, there's so many people I could see so many people saying, okay, you got these 5 pillars scale, right? I just need my structure straight. I need my contracts right. I just need these things. I'm not really worried about the enlightenment. When the reality is the enlightenment, right, that you're talking about, this love, right, is what actually helps there to be no issue with the law in the first place.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
And if you're focusing on loving people right, you can spend less time trying to figure out all the law. And I'm not saying, they'll always get you off. Well, Judge, I was focusing on trying to love this person and knowing what I need to do. But still, like, if you're loving someone, they're not going to go seek out a lawyer to figure out how to nail you. They go talk to a lawyer, not because they know you breached the contract or because they know you've broken the law. They go find a lawyer because they feel like they have been mistreated. And why do they feel like they have been mistreated? Most people don't know why. They won't articulate it, but deep down, they know they weren't loved right, or they weren't loved. They know you don't care about them. And so that's when it's at that point that there's no relationship.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense, because even when I think about it, a lot of people don't even know the law in the first place, right? Like you say, all they know is something's off, something's wrong. I got treated this way, right? This boss wasn't fair to me. My supervisor did this to me, right? They may not have any idea what rights they even have. I see it in real estate, right? Like, the people don't know, like, oh, they can't just put you out this home, right? They have all they know is like something feels off, something's wrong.
Exactly.
And they go to a professional in that field, that area. They go to that lawyer, right, in order to say, articulate for me why I'm feeling this way, right? And so we deal with the enlightenment, we deal with the love, right? We're that 90% plus of our battle is there.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
It's that simple.
That is so awesome. That's so cool. Like, it's so cool when you articulate it that way. And obviously, I know some people are listening, and I know scripture should be jumping off the page for you right now, right? Because
we can talk about a lot of scripture.
This is the reality of the situation, right? And that's why biblical principles we can take them to every aspect of life. It does not matter what we're talking about. We're talking about dealing with legal. We're talking about law. We're talking about real estate. We're talking about relationship. It doesn't matter, because it fits in every framework. It doesn't matter, right?
Exactly.
If we love, if we seek to love, that is 90+% of the battle there, right? And guess and you know what it made me think? If I love, right, I'm going to seek, like you say, right, to prevent also, right? I'm going to seek to protect ahead of time also. Same thing, like I say, right? I go set up health insurance because guess what? I'm going to try to protect my family before something comes up. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because out of love, right? And the same thing as a business owner, if you love your employees, if you love those that you're connected with, if you love your
Mhm.
partners, right? If you love your 1099 workers, if you love your contractors, right? You're gonna say, I want to set something up to where you are fairly treated. And I also, yeah, you're fairly treated too, right? But guess what? Because guess what? This
The relationship is the most valuable thing you have as a
yeah.
business.
Wow.
Not just for monetizing, but also for legal protection. And
Wow.
and you should take joy in the relationships because,
Yeah.
I believe like at the end of the day, we're told to store up treasures in heaven.
Mm,
Like what are those treasures in heaven? Like I
mm,
think it's only one thing, and that is the relationships and the people that we bring with us to eternity. Like that's the only thing that
mm.
matters.
Come on, Jay. You preaching now. That is so powerful, right? That's so powerful. The treasure that we're storing up in heaven is the people, is the individuals, right? Is the
Mhm.
relationships. Wow, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I think that really helps, like you say at the beginning, right? You said, look, you're gonna make the law something that's not scary. And I think that's exactly what you helped us to do right there, right? It's to kind of turn our minds, right, to realize that guess what? Love is the fulfilling of the law, right?
Exactly. Yeah, Galatians 5:14. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word, in the
Mm,
statement, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then, yeah,
yes.
Romans 13, verse 10. Yeah, love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. Yep.
Mm, amen.
Yep.
Amen. Man, I'm so happy you're able to share that with us and really, like I say, to help change our minds, change our mindset, right, of how we think about some of these things, right, and how we consider the whole point of the legal system is set up right to really trying to mimic and trying to help us to love our neighbor as ourselves, right? That's what
Really
it's
is.
really seeking to do at the end of the day. Now, I know you also mentioned some things that I can hear some people kind of getting a little afraid, right? Because they say, well, I've already started my business. I'm not at the beginning. I already have some contractors. I got some intellectual property out there. I've even had some people make some logos and different things for me, right? I have no idea if if protection is there for me and them or if it's not, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs may be in that position, right, to where they're already in the midst of running their business. They're trying to deal with scaling and dealing with their products or their service, right? And
Mhm.
and they may be hearing this and say, "Man, Jay, like I don't have any of I feel like I don't have any of these things in place, right? Where do I start to even look at or what how do I go about the process to know where do I need contracts in place or what do I need to go back and maybe deal with the person that maybe made my logo, for example, right? Maybe they did make this logo and I don't know if I own it or not, for example, right? Because I think that's a pretty common thing, right? We may go online to get a logo made, maybe even Fiverr for somebody
Mhm.
overseas or things like that, right? How do I go about right knowing that I actually own this thing because I don't have any like paperwork in between me and this individual?
Uh, I mean, my advice is just ideally hire a lawyer who knows how to do it. Like your time is so precious. You should focus on doing what you're good at and then have the
Mm,
lawyer help run you quickly through these things. Because honestly, like even to form a business takes me 2 weeks. Like it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm trying to automate it, but then again, I'm setting up automation so I could do it all the time. You don't. It's
mm,
going to take you 2 whole weeks. Do you want to spend 2 whole weeks doing it? Or do you want to, it goes back to like how God made the body of Christ. And this, when I talked about early on, my mindset shift and understanding the value of everybody, part of that
it's
is
powerful.
understanding, okay, yeah, what has God given you? What are the gifts you have that God wants you to share with others? And then recognize what are the gifts God has given others that you should
Mm,
lean on. if we go with the mindset that I should be good at everything and do everything, I believe that we're actually going contrary to God's plan.
That I agree with you. You know, I actually have had this conversation even with my local church, because when we talking about getting, you know, even sharing the gospel, right? Like sometimes we try to focus on every single thing when it's like, but what area or what community maybe, right, is our main focus? There's going to be other people who will come in, because guess what, the gospel is for everybody. But if you don't have no target focus, you actually end up not hitting anybody. And that's
Right.
something I've learned more and more as an entrepreneur, that when I look at the church body, I realize this is probably why we're not as effective as we could be, because we actually don't have a target we're aiming at. We don't know who
Right.
we're dealing with. We don't know who we're talking to. And so we end up talking to nobody, right? You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
We try to put all the ministerial duties on a small class of people we call the pastors or ministers. And so then they have to preach to everybody
Yeah.
and then end up
Yeah.
speaking to nobody. And meanwhile, the rest of us are sort of left out of the picture where, yeah, we're each individually made to better connect with a type of person. We have experiences or personality traits that will connect with others. So all of us should be engaged in ministry. Sorry, that is a tangent, but yeah.
No,
Totally
no,
with you, man.
it was a tangent, but this is biblical entrepreneurship, so it's okay. That's a great tangent. It's not even a tangent because it's biblical entrepreneurship. Okay, the whole point of everything we're doing, just like how you've been sharing, right, in your field, right, in your career, is we're seeking to have an impact on people, right, for the gospel. Period. Point blank. That's the reason we're seeking to do what we do. When I'm in, you know, my real estate company, I call it Mini Mansions, right? We're preparing a place for you, right? And so just as God has a place for you in heaven, I believe He has a place for you on this earth, right? But guess what? While I'm
Amen.
working with people, I get to connect with them. I get to come into their life, and this is why we need more biblical entrepreneurs, like you say, this body, right? And you got to think, man, if where you get your car worked at is somebody who recognizes that they are biblical entrepreneur. If your lawyer, biblical entrepreneur, right? Your real estate agent, a biblical entrepreneur, right? Like the place that you go for your food, everybody recognizes that they're not just there for simply the service, right? But they're there for something deeper, for something more impactful, right? For something more foundational. That bond that you talked about earlier, right? Then guess what? Man, that's when we really start to see, you know, I believe we can see those moments like Acts chapter 2, right? When so many
Yes.
people converted in a day, because we have these people, these centers of influence everywhere. But guess what? We're everywhere in the community. They see us everywhere they go, right? You know what I'm saying? Not simply with necessarily, oh, this sign that I'm holding up, right? But this relationship that I've built with them, right? With this,
Exactly.
with this great service that I provided to them, right? That I'm trying to be better in this area so I can better serve you. I'm trying to learn more about my field so I can better serve you. That's what we're seeking to do and to become.
And
Yeah.
everybody wants relationship. Everybody's looking for meaningful relationship because it's so hard to come by. So if we are that person who actually cares,
Yeah.
actually desires and values them and the relationship with them, that will have a tremendous amount of value to just about anybody. And
Yeah.
and really it's I think where you're going with, right, is that it is that relationship by which people will then probably get to know God and God's love, and they will then get saved. And it's
Yeah.
not so much the message, and the message can play a part. The message is important. But yeah, people, we say, right, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And
Yeah.
we so much front load what we know and don't get to the caring part.
That's true. We front load what we know, right? And then try to put the care in the background instead of front loading our care, right? And then walking people through what we know. And sometimes I think we're not even thinking about how we like to be dealt with, right? Because if somebody's hitting me up and
Yeah.
I don't feel, I mean, this is even from a business standpoint, right? Like I need to, I've also learned that guess what? Like I need to be connected to the people I'm working with. Like there's something different in those relationships than the individuals where, I mean, they're providing a service or whatever it may be, right? But there's not a connection, right? Like we don't resonate, right? So if that's true in that, right, how much true is it in the most important thing that we have to sell, right? Which is the gospel, right? Right? Like it's free. Like I always say, the gospel is free, but to give it is not free. It requires sacrifice, right? Sacrifice on our part, right? Time, effort, energy, right? All these different type of sacrifices, right? But at the end of the day, you got to think about how people receive information, and you yourself probably don't receive information that way. I know I don't, right? Like if I'm being bombarded in a way and I feel like you just asked me this to ask me this next question, I'm not even in the mood right now, to be honest. I got stuff to do. I'm kind of like, I got off a call, sitting on a call, but
Exactly.
but if I feel like there's a real relationship connection there, it's like, if I can't talk to you right now, you know what? Let's set up a time, in the future, right? Because I kind of want to hear you out. You know what I mean? Why? Because the relationship was there, right? And so, man, I'm so happy that you were able to come on and share. How do people get connected with you, right? Like if somebody say, look, Jay, I just want to be the knee, okay? Or I just want to be the arm. You know what I mean? I'm gonna let you be the foot, okay? That's what you handle. I'm gonna let you handle that. How do they get in contact with you, right? To be able to allow you to do what you do as a part of the body.
So I love hanging out on social media. Facebook, LinkedIn are probably the best ways to just reach me, message me. Just look me up, Jay Razzouk, Jay, and then Razzouk, Razzouk. And I'm not worried about you finding somebody else. As far as I know, I'm the only Jay Razzouk on the planet.
It's good to have a unique name, right? Because you don't got no problem with somebody else looking you up, because that happens pretty often on Facebook. Like, you this person, what's your picture again? Okay, you got the flowers. All right, cool, I got you. So that definitely happens pretty often, right?
To
With some
you
of
all
the
the
names.
time?
I mean, not to me personally, but when I'm looking
Okay.
other people up that have
Oh,
like,
yeah.
a more general name, right? It's so funny because when you're younger, in school and stuff, you feel like, oh man, my name is so different. But now when you get older, it's like, oh, praise God. I thank you
Yes.
thank you that I'm unique. You recognize the blessings in
So
it, right?
true.
It just takes some maturity sometimes, right? You know what I mean?
That's
But
right.
man, I really appreciate you. So I'm just gonna take a brief moment, right? Just to, like I say, pay the bills, right? Just talk about a sponsor, and we come back, man. I just want to give you a chance to just give any closing words to entrepreneurs that are out there, right? Any words of encouragement, right? Any admonitions that you may have for them, right?
Mhm.
But I just want to share a little bit about our sponsor for today's episode. It is Tent Makers 101. That's Tent Makers 101, where Christian principles fuel business practices. And I know you may be saying, right, are you a tent maker? Yes, you are a tent maker. If you have a gift, a talent, a product, a service, any business that is seeking to follow in Jesus's footsteps and meet the needs of the community so you can impact them with the everlasting gospel. We're meeting every day on Facebook with other entrepreneurs in order to foster growth, collaboration, and strategic partnerships for increasing your brand awareness and your revenue. Because guess what? We truly believe that every business is a ministry. When you accomplish God's purpose for you in the world in the form of products or services that provide true value to your particular audience, then guess what? You are truly successful. So look, don't wait. Join us today over at Facebook at Tent Makers 101 Biblical Entrepreneurship. So, Jay, the floor is yours. What was last word of admonition or of encouragement to entrepreneurs? Maybe they've already started, maybe they've been doing it for maybe a couple of years or so, right? But early on in their journey, right? What would you like to just share with them as we close out?
So I'm speaking to you, the listener, and I want you to know that you probably hear all the time from the world that you got to be a shrewd business person. And what that looks like is you need to have contracts that are so much one-sided, all in your favor, and you got to be tough. You got to, not give people slack, and all these sort of practices. Be tough and strict with your employees. And to some degree that's it, right? But I have to say, when you get too one-sided, when it's just all about you, it really does start to come back against you. And from a legal perspective, I have clients all the time who come to me because they're presented with a contract that scares them. Or people might lose clients because the agreement is one-sided. And get this, if your contract is so one-sided, a judge might not even want to enforce it. So you really do hurt yourself by going too overboard, worrying about yourself, making it all about you. I really think it is the safest approach, the happiest approach, most rewarding approach to really be fair, be reasonable, to love people, to have a contract, to work on terms that are inviting, that are mutual, and really focus on building those relationships that will endure, a relationship that will continue to bring bring money hopefully for you and bring value to that other person, and hopefully lead into an internal relationship where we all go to the kingdom together. Like, really don't hesitate to lean on that side. You will sleep better at night, and that's what God wants. That's deep down what they want. That's how we all as a human race can just enjoy each other. Like, we really don't have to compete. We don't have to compete. We're all unique. We all have different things to offer. Let's just support one another.
Hey, it's no better way to leave it and close it out than that, man. So you guys, everybody out there, man, thank you so much for locking in with us at the Lion and the Lambo podcast. Make sure you look up Jay on Facebook, on Instagram, all social media. Let him know that you appreciate what he shared on this episode. Connect with him to get your business set up from a legal standpoint, right? So you can make sure that, guess what, you have something that the judge himself would honor. And I'm not just talking about the earthly judge. I'm talking about the one in heaven, right? So again, man, appreciate y'all. Y'all know y'all can find us on every streaming platform. We're on Apple, we're on Google, Amazon Music, Spotify. We're everywhere. Of course, if you want the visual experience, we're on YouTube as well, so you can lock in with us. And yeah, man, I just want you to know that it is possible for you to combine your business with your ministry, right? And that you can impact the world. See you guys later.